And over here on the forward end, you can see how close the little wheel and bearing assembly is to the edge of the slider. So we'll keep hammering on this, and the slider should keep going, and the ball will go a little bit further, but eventually it'll just slide off, and we can pull this roller and bearing assembly out just like that. So we'll keep doing this, and we'll get this separated. And that's it. We got it separated. Oops. There it is. We'll just grab our little roller assembly. And then we'll get our little bearing piece. Slide that forward. And then it's all out. So then just grab the whole thing and pull it out from the back. Just like that. And so now we got to work on the slider mechanism for the bucket seats. Alright, here's the slider mechanism off of the bucket seats. And as we've pointed out several times, the back end is different. That's why we're swapping out these lower portions of the slider. This one is removed a little bit differently in that I'm not going to drill out these holes here. It's a little more work to get this lower slider out, but I don't want to do any damage to this top part of the slider because we're keeping that. Likewise with the other side, with the other piece, the lower slider, we're keeping that. So on this one, we're not going to drill out these holes. However, we are going to remove this rivet and this rivet here. And I'll go ahead and do that and then show you how I get the little roller ball and bearing assemblies removed. Alright, on the slider mechanism for the bucket seats, I've got both the little rivets drilled out here on the front of the lower part of the slider and here at the back of the top part of the slider. And the next part is kind of the tricky part. So let me get set up and I'll show you how I get these two pieces separated. Okay, I've got the position that I have the slider mechanism is actually the seat would be in a very forward position. But what this does when you push back on this lower part of the slider, it puts, you can see it right there, these little bearing pieces, puts them at the edges of where they need to come out. So here at the back, this one is very, very close to the edge here. And you'll notice a little divot there. You can see, you know, roughly where the ball is, and it's pretty well butted up against that divot, which is a raised area on the inside, which does not allow the ball, the little roller piece, to travel any further than that. Likewise, on the front, you can see the little roller assembly in there, very close to the front. And let me get the camera set up and I'll show you how I get these pieces out. Okay, so you can, in the camera, in the view, you can just barely see the edge of this little bearing assembly sticking out there. So this is basically sitting roughly like that. Now what I do to get these out is I take a very small flat bladed screwdriver and a hammer, and I come in here between the two sliders and you just tap very lightly, and what you're trying to do is just force this whole bearing assembly to come out along with the little roller wheel. So this will come out like that. So you set your screwdriver in there, tap, 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 move it over, tap, 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 and you just go back and forth until this bearing assembly comes out. Likewise on the front, you do the exact same thing. Remember, this little bearing assembly is very close to the front there. So you leave everything in its position. When you get that rear one out, you come up here and you do the exact same thing. Now on the front, you'll need to move this little riveted piece side to side when you're tapping this little bearing assembly out. Otherwise, if it's centered up like it's supposed to be, you can't get the right angle on the screwdriver. So you move it to the side, get your screwdriver in there, tap, 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 Move it to the other side, tap, 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 and just back and forth until that whole bearing assembly comes out.